Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Really, if somebody is wanting to do the body image work, I find that any movement, towards that body love end is going to bring somebody relief and help them experience more confidence in their body. That includes hating your body less.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 581 with guest Megan Hadley. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so grateful for you every week. I have a repeat guest on today, and she's local to me. She's a local friend and amazing human and expert on this topic. So I'm excited to welcome her back on the show in just a minute. But I have some exciting news. Well, I actually have a few exciting news things that are happening that are in regard to books, multiple, but I'm going to make that announcement shortly, probably in the next week or so. Check my Instagram. And one thing is that I am reintroducing group programs. That's something I have not done in years. And so I'm really pumped about it. I know that many of you have been asking, when is the next group program? How can I work with you at this capacity? And so it's coming. So please stay tuned. I am in the works of creating everything for the year. You know me, I get excited and I announce things too soon on the podcast. So I'm going to be smart about it and make sure I have everything all in order before I make that announcement to you. But I am really excited about it and getting to see you on Zoom again, as well as I'm going to do an in-person thing this year. So stay tuned for all of that. I also have an opening or 2, I might have 2 for private coaching, if that's something that you're interested in. Everything can be found at andreaowen.com/links. That's where all the important things are housed for you to click on and get more information and or sign up. andreaowen.com/links. Alrighty, let me tell you a little bit about today's guest. Meg Hadley is a registered dietitian nutritionist who is on a mission to help women become more nutrition and body confident so that they can enjoy life more and make bigger impact on the world. She does this through her coaching program, Becoming Body Confident, and through her private practice, Simple Nutrition in Greensboro, North Carolina. So without further ado, here is Megan. Megan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited to keep talking to you about these topics.
Part two. Here we are. Well, this comes from a listener request. I put a survey out earlier this year, and I'm trying my best to get to all of the requests. And this person wanted to know specifically around eating disorders and eating disorder recovery. So if people are listening to this, I don't want you to stop listening if you don't identify as someone, who's had an eating disorder. I think that for women who grew up in this culture, I think probably the vast majority of us have struggled with at least quote unquote disordered eating. So can we start there? Can I make that into a question? Can you say some things about that?
Yeah, I really look at disordered eating and eating disorders on a spectrum. They're all there together, from, with the farthest level of anxiety experienced being the eating disorder, and all the way up through disordered eating still constitutes dieting or trying to do anything to change body shape or size. It still fits on that disordered eating spectrum.
So even can we just call out intermittent fasting, even things like doing paleo and all of that?
Yeah, you can absolutely call that out. Whole 30, which I think is an insidious one that a lot of people don't think about, but a lot of anything kind of restriction. And Whole 30 kind of fits under that more wellness culture-y aspect. That's the reason why
I call that like flirting with an eating disorder. That's what I call it.
Yes. Well said. Well said. So I think you make a really good point that even if somebody maybe can't relate to the eating disorder I also think it's so important for us women to have awareness of that this is happening and it's actually really prominent. I mean, the number of people who have eating disorders in our country is similar to the number of people they predict have diabetes in our country. We talk about diabetes a lot. We're not talking about eating disorders as much. So anybody can relate to this conversation based on, what some of the different things that we're going to talk about. But also even just from having an awareness of there's probably women in your life or men who have an eating disorder that you may not know about.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, a lot of times we see just these sensationalized or very severe cases of someone with anorexia who, has become emaciated, or someone who binges and purges several times a day. And that's really the more like far down on the spectrum, correct?
Yeah, it is. It's farther down on the spectrum, and it's really not the most typical presentations of eating disorders. And eating disorders, as well as different places on that spectrum, because I want anybody to hear that if they don't struggle with an eating disorder, it doesn't mean that they're still not having a significant impact on their life, from negative body image and struggles with food and struggles with weight, feeling like they're struggling with their weight, which is part of the issue, is the perception. But a lot of what is really significant life impacting eating disorder behavior don't even kind of fit, a stereotypical. Most of it fits like atypical. Most of it fits an atypical, place, a diagnosis.
Okay. So what are the most common sort of eating disorders or disordered eating that you see with high achieving women? Like, what are their symptoms?
Well, with food, it tends to be, feeling, restriction. And all of the eating disorders are based in restriction, except for ARFID, which we won't get to in this because that's different, but we're talking about diagnosed eating disorders. So if somebody has experience with binging, somebody has experience with just restriction in more of an anorexia format, like it's all of it is based in restriction. It's the restriction that can perpetuate a binge or overeating experience. And that happens anywhere on the spectrum. Most people that I've seen in the years that I've been working with folks with eating disorders in my brick and mortar practice is, a combination of a different behavior that doesn't fit any one single diagnosis in the DSM-5, which is what mental health folks use to diagnose with. And so a lot of times people will see that and they'll say, well, I don't have an eating disorder because it doesn't look exactly like
That's what I did, because I was a heavy restrictor in periods of time in my 20s, but I still always had my period. Mm-hmm. And there was another really big symptom that I wasn't experiencing. I can't remember what it was, but I always got my period. And to me, that felt like once that happens, then you're in trouble. It's very much like alcoholism, to be honest with you, because there were things that I saw in other people where I was like, oh, but I don't hide my booze like in the laundry basket, but I don't drink in the morning. So I'm okay. Yeah. But yet I was, I had trouble sleeping. I would go to bed with a rapid heart rate. My hair started falling out. Like it was not good.
What you're bringing up is such an important point, because even folks who have been diagnosed with an eating disorder struggle with that diagnosis because there's this constant kind of narrative of like, I'm not sick enough. Mm-hmm. I'm not sick enough. It's not actually that bad. Yet when they feel like it impacts the way it impacts their life, constantly thinking about food, constantly thinking about body image, constantly thinking about movement, like where they're fitting in exercise, whatever different behaviors might be participating in, it's actually taking up a big chunk of brain space. I mean, and so in a high achieving woman, and a lot of folks that I see with eating disorders are high achieving women. A lot of them, some of them may be perfectionistic. We see that a little bit more in our folks that have anorexia, high bent towards perfectionism. Folks are managing to balance like so many different things in their lives and keeping up, with all of the different behaviors that are coming with the eating disorder as well.
When should someone make the decision to seek help? Because and I also, this is sort of like a tag along question. I have found in my experience, it was never really about the food or the calorie restriction or the exercise, calories in, calories out. It was like the life stuff. So when should someone get help and what might that look like?
I think you start getting tired.
In many ways,
you start getting tired. That's when a lot of times folks get help. What I think I would really want women to hear is that when you start realizing in the day to day that you're thinking a lot about like the food, the body, when you are feeling like it's consuming like a chunk of your life. Like a lot of times I'll give people a blank pie chart and kind of say, okay, to the right of this, write out like a lot of the things that matter to you in life. And then where would you put them on the pie chart? And a lot of times like food and body is taking up. They're like, can it all be food and body?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The point is that there's a lot of different things that matter to an individual. And we want that food and body should take up some of our time, but not all of our time. And you're right, especially when it comes to the point of eating disorder and the anxiety tends to be that intense. It's not always about thinness, although trying to be small, trying to make the body smaller, trying to be smaller is a lot of way that manifests, but a lot of it is trying to manage that anxiety. It's, a coping skill to try to manage some of the anxious feelings or the panicky feelings, stress that comes about in life. And it's being able to help somebody shift and reach for some different coping skills in order to help, it's kind of like a different way it's not a sustainable way to regulate the nervous system is what, is really kind of trying to happen there. And so, I think that, noticing that like when this is taking up a big part of your life, and that you want to be able to put some things back in perspective is certainly a place where somebody can get support, whether or not they think they have an eating disorder or not. Because I think a lot of women who would fall more in that disordered eating dieting spectrum would be able to relate to that.
Oh, this is so interesting. I love a couple of things that you said. One of them being, I think we're constantly trying to, and I think maybe it's people who are seekers, people who listen to these kinds of podcasts, like trying to figure out a way how to regulate our nervous system, even though we might not call it that. Like we just want to feel better. We want more tools and resources to be able to behave better and think better. It's like at the end of the day, you're trying to regulate your nervous system. That's really what we're trying to do. Right. Which brings me to, I was thinking about when you were talking, I was thinking about when I don't know if people know this that listen to this podcast. So 100 years ago when blogging was still like popular, I started a blog back in about 2007. And it was right around the time too that I had, really accepted what my therapist had been telling me, that I was pretty severely codependent and that I had an eating disorder. So I was blogging in a way to try to kind of unpack it and figure it out. I think many of us get to a point, I think many of the listeners probably can relate to this, where we try to figure out why are we behaving the way that we do? Like, why do we keep coming up in these same relationship patterns? Why do we have these eating disorder symptoms? Why do we drink too much, et cetera, et cetera? So I was like in that place, kind of blogging, like trying to figure it out. And then I kind of moved on to a different symptom, and then it became drinking, and I wasn't symptomatic in my eating disorder anymore, which then I ended up getting sober. So I sort of left the eating disorder behind, both in symptoms and unpacking. Like what was it? Many years later, to make a very long story short, it was trauma. But also, have you listened to, and I'll put the link in the show notes for people that might be interested in listening to it. If you listen to the episode with Dr. Hilary McBride when she was on Glennon Doyle's podcast, that We Can Do Hard Things.
I have not, but I did get to listen to an interview with her with Jen Hatmaker.
Okay. And so Dr. Hilary McBride has an eating disorder past. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a population of people that she largely works with. And I don't listen to Glennon's podcast very often, but I listened to this one because it was about psychedelics, which I'm, mildly obsessed with at the moment. And she was talking about how she had the psychedelic experience. And I've sent this podcast episode specifically so people that are close to me can listen to this one part where she talks about her experience going through this. I think it was psilocybin. I think it was magic mushrooms. She, from a therapeutic standpoint, she was having this experience. And she talks about how she saw the origin of her eating disorder and how it was from at a young age, she would go through these hard experiences, as we all do. And she didn't know what to do with these emotions and, what was happening to her nervous system. And so she funneled it away. And she knew that people around her were overwhelmed and having feelings, and that was too hard for her. And so she funneled it away. And the eating disorder was a means for her to be able to push it down and still be able to connect with other people. And I was crying listening to this, Megan, because I was like, that's it. That's what I was doing. That's what I was doing with the eating disorder. That's what I was doing with bad relationships. That's what I was doing with the drinking. Mm-hmm. That's it. And so the magic part of that, to put a bow on the end of it, was that during the psychedelic experience, she was able to sort of relive these hard experiences and have different outcomes. Of course, it's all in her mind, but it allows your brain, and like neuroplasticity and blah, blah, blah. which is another conversation for another expert. But there was, my point is that there was healing in it. And I might be way ahead of myself, but it just made me really excited. And anyway.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing because, a lot of times with clients, I help them remind that they were trying to survive something, with your eating disorder behaviors, and trying to remember that the eating disorder, a lot of times too, it's kind of like a little protector. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, we need to do these things, and we need to do it in this way, in order for us to be okay. It does serve a purpose to a degree. Mm-hmm. And, when somebody's in a place where they're trying to work towards recovery, that can be kind of hard to grapple with. Like, some folks that really resonates with, some folks it does not. But to your point, it's survival. It's reaching for what somebody is able to figure out is helping them survive that time. And really too, if we think about it, Andrea, like the disordered eating on the spectrum too, it's ultimately what's happening there too. Like, women have a tremendous amount of pressure when we're looking at it more so from the body image standpoint, just a tremendous amount of pressure to try to fit a societal expectation. And the roots of that are survival too, of being able to be accepted, being able to be loved, being able to fit in a different way across the board. The origins there are that we are all just trying to do this thing in the day to day.
For sure. Well, we have to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to ask you more about treatment. So we'll be right back. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers inline and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/noise, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/noise to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/noise. Fast forward to the end of 2024 and think about your goals. What can you do right now to give yourself the best chance of succeeding? If you want to learn a new language, you absolutely should get Babbel. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Now it's so easy to speak simple conversation phrases with the guy that takes care of my lawn without having to consult language apps. Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/noise. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/noise, spelled BABBEL.com/noise. Rules and restrictions may apply. Today's podcast is sponsored by MIDI Health. Ladies, are you over 40 like me and dealing with hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, some vaginal dryness, or weight gain? Don't just accept it as part of aging. These symptoms are often linked to hormonal changes during perimenopause and menopause. At MIDI Health, they get it. Their experts know what you're going through and how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause specialists offering safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. And guess what? MIDI care is covered by insurance. So stop pushing through it alone. Schedule a virtual visit and dive deep into your unique symptoms and health background. You'll walk away feeling heard and with a plan to start feeling better. Visit MIDI Health today and reclaim your well-being. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. joinmidi.com.
If someone knows that they have a problem, but they can't get into medical treatment for whatever reason, because we know healthcare is so amazing here in the United States and in other places, what is the route that can be most beneficial for them? Someone like with limited resources, or maybe somebody who's just kind of like, getting their feet wet.
I think if somebody has an opportunity at all to be able to reach out to an outpatient, it depends on where they're at, but outpatient mental health therapist or outpatient dietitian who specializes in eating disorders. And then I would always recommend who practices in the way they serve all their clients from a weight inclusive or health at every size modality, which I think is really important because every now and then you will actually see somebody that's doing like weight loss and eating disorder treatment in the same place.
I'm going to ask you about health at every size in a few questions here. So.
And that's pretty, I don't know how one does that because it's a lot of times the pursuit of weight loss restriction is the number one trigger for developing an eating disorder in the first place. So, I mean, there's a lot of genetics and other things that can load the gun, but a lot of times it's restriction that pulls the trigger in the first place. If somebody is able to have the means through using an insurance benefit or being able to find somebody on a low fee scale or just out of pocket, if they're able to start the work there, that can be immensely helpful place to start. And if you're thinking about somebody who maybe doesn't have that many resources, I think beginning to do some reading. Life Without Ed is a book that's been around for a long time, written by a woman named Jenny Schaefer, who
I saw her speak. I think I was pregnant with my youngest, so many years ago. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it helps you just not feel so alone because she really delves into a lot of the thoughts that happen. If somebody's struggling with binge eating, there is a book, and I'm going to have to send it to you later because all of a sudden the names are escaping me. But there is an excellent book that can be followed, kind of like treatment patterns that somebody could maybe start thinking about themselves. Yeah, the title is something binge eating disorder. So I'll send it to you so you can drop it in the notes for folks. But that book would be a great way to approach things as well if somebody's struggling more with binge eating. But really, trying to find a way to be able to start working with somebody in outpatient can be really helpful. There's also a wonderful organization called Project Heal, who is offering help supplement folks to get the treatment they need, be it outpatient, inpatient, or in between. Mm-hmm. And you can apply for a scholarship through Project Heal. It's a great place to be.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. We'll put those links in the show notes for for those of you that are interested. I have found, and I'm curious if you see this as well, in my experience with my eating disorder and how it's very different from drinking and abstaining is the obvious. Like, we don't need alcohol to survive. And so when I got sober, I just got sober and it was fine. I mean, not fine, but what you get what I'm trying to say. But with my eating disorder, I have found, like you just said, restriction is such an easy trigger that it comes back and it almost startles me. Like someone snuck up on me, like someone came in the room and I'm like, wow, I didn't know you were still here.
Where did you come from?
I had murdered you. Like no, it's still and even just like getting the flu. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
When you lose a few pounds and it was very interesting when, I've talked to people about my Hashimoto's experience and I had gained, and people might remember me talking about the saga I had with my underwear. And I made it into a joke because like I kept thinking something was wrong with my underwear, but it was actually like my butt was just getting bigger. And so it was sort of, the way that my symptoms were, it was sort of slowly, and then all at once in terms of not feeling well, the weight gain. But when I finally got on the right medication and some other life things happened that I think helped with getting my thyroid to where it needed to be, as well as the symptoms going away. One of the symptoms was that I lost the weight. The weight came off. And it was an interesting thing to experience, especially because I had gained the weight and then gone to a place of like, okay, this is my body now. Like, this is my size. And I bought all new clothes and was like, okay, this is me at this age and this size. And then the weight came off like fairly quickly. And I was like, oh, here I am again. Like, and it was a new roller coaster. And I'm like, God damn it, I'm still here at 48. Like, what is this? So do you find that to be, I guess my question is, when people experience eating disorders, do they find that they sort of like do this dance with it over the years?
Yeah, it really can be. It can be kind of an ongoing thing because you're right. I mean, we are like living organisms that are constantly changing, and even unintentional weight loss, like you mentioned, the flu. I've even seen it when women postpartum, which just natural losing some of their body weight because of,
and then the pressure of like, get your before baby body back. So.
Yes. I mean, that's a whole nother ball game.
Gross.
But, even unintentional restriction can even trigger this. Like there's a biological thing happening there. And, it can be something that, somebody might need to remember throughout their time and be in touch with, like, oh, wait, there's some things that are coming up again that I don't need anymore. But they're coming up and they're trying to say like, hey, do you need me? Hey, do you need me? One of the things I think is so important to work on with my clients with when they are really, in those later stages of recovery is learning their own, I call them tells, learning their own tells about when is this starting to kind of come up in a very sneaky kind of way. And what do you want to do about it when that happens? What is it that you want to remind yourself of?
I like that question of like so are you saying like the eating disorder kind of says like, do you need me?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
I look at it that way.
Like the inner, very similar to the inner critic. It's like, no, I'm good. But I guess thanks for being around.
Like, oh, are we doing this again? Do you need it? Like,
are we getting back together? No.
Do we need to regulate some things here? No, I've got other ways. To do that. When you start picking up those behaviors again, or restriction again, or trying to change body shape or size, even if the motivation is more so from this place of like, I feel like I need to do this thing to make me feel better. It kind of like tends to snowball. And there's a message that often pops up that I always try to help my clients look out for of like, do this a little bit. Like I'll just restrict a little bit, or I'll just purge a little bit, or I'll just do whatever this thing is a little bit to like 5 pounds or whatever it might be. And then I'll be okay and I'll be better and I'll stop. But it rarely.
Sounds like moderation.
Stops.
That sounds like I'm just going to have one glass of wine.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah. It rarely stops. It normally continues to snowball from there. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. When I went through that kind of like weight gain and then weight loss again, what I was trying to regulate with myself and accept and really hone in and listen to my intuition. And I think we talked about this the last time you were on, about how most bodies have like a set weight of like where they want to be. And it might be within like 5 or 10 pounds, but, and it changes depending on where we are in our life and hormones and those types of things. But I have found, really trying to listen to my body. And when I was sick and I had gained the weight, that was hard because I struggled with like, because I felt, and it was inflammation. I even like look back at pictures and I'm like, I wasn't just in a bigger body. I was puffy. Like you can tell it wasn't, but at the time I was like, is this where my body wants to be? It was very confusing, and also being a little bit gaslit by my doctor. No, it's just perimenopause. I'm like, I don't think this is it. My point is that it took me a minute to kind of figure it out, but it was really a matter of me working pretty diligently about listening to my body. Is like, is this the size that my body needs to be right now? Where is my set weight? What is actually my body trying to tell me in terms of, am I sick or am I not? So it was a tricky situation, but it helped a lot.
I really love, and I noticed that too when you're talking about it before, I really love this, question of like, is this my body size now? I mean, it shows the work that you've done over the years, that you would say like, this is not super comfy, to have my body change. And, do I need to now look at this as like, do I need to do some acceptance work of where I'm at now? And even regardless of being sick or not, which certainly changed the path on how you took care of yourself from there. But, if that's what the body's doing at the time, accepting that that's just where the body is at the time for whatever reason is also probably really helpful. Because had you kind of jumped into a path of like, oh, I need to fix this, immediately, it probably would have continued to increase inflammation in your body.
Well, and I did try to fix it by ways that actually I think made me worse, because I started gaining weight and I was like, oh wait, this, my first reaction is like, what is this? Like, I know. And so I upped the cardio, which my body was like, no more cortisol. So what was interesting is my attempts to try to quote unquote, like fix my symptoms made my symptoms worse, which was just the alarm started to go off of like, okay, there's something like really wrong here. I want to ask you, can you talk to us about, like, paint us a picture of what does the other side, air quotes, of eating disorder recovery look like? Like for someone who might not know, like, how does a healthy person cope with problems and handle body size? We talked about it a little bit, food, those types of things.
From what I've seen clients do is that when you go from kind of feeling like maybe a stressful event happens in one's life, and perhaps they would have restricted to numb from that, to be able to feel like they can kind of plow through it, like you said, to not necessarily dig deeper into the emotional pieces of it. And instead be able to better ask a question about, that still might be an instinct that comes up, but be able to better ask a question of, what do I really need right now? Like, what is actually going on here? Do I need to take care of myself by digging deeper into this in therapy? Do I need to take care of myself with some grounding techniques? Do I need to take care of myself with making contact with another human being? And depending on the person and depending on the situation, when a normal life event would happen that would make somebody want to reach for an eating disorder behavior in order to cope, they're more able to kind of ask the question of, what else do I need here? One of the most important parts about recovery too is that desire is a lot less persistent. Like you said, maybe you'd gone a long time without having an experience like that. And I'd be interested in what your experience like is. It just gets less and less and less and less and less. And somebody who maybe feels like this is a gradual experience than what you had described earlier, is that it just continues to be, you can kind of reflect year over year of like, oh, like I'm experiencing this time and space in my life differently. It's not taking up as much headspace. It's not a constant thing that I feel like I'm having to manage. And I think for somebody who's experiencing these constant negative thoughts about food, body, and what they should and should not be doing about it, it's hard to imagine that can ever be true. that it can ever be true that is no longer a daily or maybe even a weekly battle anymore.
Yeah, I've definitely been in that place where I remember a time where it was so that unconscious incompetence of like, I didn't even realize that there were people who didn't constantly think about, you know what I mean? Like it never even occurred to me. It was sort of like the fish in the water, like what water, like, what do you mean? And it wasn't until I think my symptoms got really bad and people started to comment about it that I was like, oh, is this not like what every woman in their 20s is doing? Like, or is there another way to live? And also, I mean, it was the same with alcohol. Like when I would think about getting sober, I would get so scared because I couldn't imagine my life without alcohol. Like it had become such a coping mechanism for me. I was terrified of how to go about my life and my day-to-day life without having it constantly consume me. And I think some of that was unconscious of, does this mean I'm going to have to open Pandora's box? Like, does this mean I'm going to have to the answer was yes. And like, I'm not like kind of cringing over here because I think that you have to get to that place. And I've said this so many times on the show, like you have to get to that place where the fear of staying the same, like the fear of continuing with your symptoms, whatever that is, whether it's with food or body or alcohol or whatever, is worse than maybe trying to look at all your trauma. That was the tipping point.
Yeah, absolutely. Even folks who experience this more in a dieting capacity. I mean, I have a therapist that I served one time and she'd said the most beautiful thing. She said, I've really been able to get more into and address more like my core issues now that I'm not, using this place as the place to constantly go to in order to fix X, Y, and Z. In order to try to feel better. It does clear space. And you're so right. That can be a really scary thing. I've seen clients worry that the pain is just going to be too intense.
Yeah.
The pain is just going to be too intense. And that's the reason why, having somebody that is a mental health therapist has experience in eating disorders, alongside, if you're able to do it, a dietitian who specializes in eating disorders can help. Like we overlap, it's like a Venn diagram. Mm-hmm. And so we overlap in the work that they do and we're kind of there to help support you through that place and to take it at the pace that you need to take it.
For people who are like kind of also cringing and thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready to go in there. I want to say this is hopefully it's helpful and makes you feel hopeful. It's so many things. Like I made up that it was going to be way worse than it actually was. And I'm talking about like the recovery piece of actually sitting in therapy, talking about your neuroses, and I've even done some somatic work, which is sort of the next frontier. Like I'm not nearly done with it. I've only done a little bit of it and it's enormously helpful. And I will continue to do that. And, some of that will be with psychedelics, but I have found that when I'm sitting in a therapist's office, and I've had several different therapists, the vast majority who've been really great, is that, when we're processing out loud and we're talking about these things, and then we kind of say the thing that has been buried. Like for me, it's, I think my core major wound is nobody really likes me all that much. Like people are just like humoring me. Nobody really gives a shit. And when I talk about that from underneath a surface level, as I just talked about right now, like where I really like say the things that I believe about myself to be true. And the therapist just sits with me and just like, they don't like gasp or, they're not like, oh yeah, that could be true. Or that's your belief. That's weird. Like that's what, my own inner critic, the thing that tells me like to shut it down, like, maybe you should drink alcohol. Maybe you should restrict. That part of my brain is telling me that the therapist is going to think I'm stupid or they're going to like confirm my biggest fears. But when they just sit with you and they're like, yeah, I get it. Or that's common. Or say more about that. Like, and they just let you cry sitting there on the couch and they let me tell jokes and they see right through it, that is healing. And it, even to say it, and it's like, really, is it that big of a deal? It is a big deal to be witnessed in your humanity. I never knew how powerful that was, to be witnessed in your humanity, because it is what connects us. It is what brings us together. It is, I think, where like real love is, even if you just have like a therapist client relationship. Anyway, so I hope that helps people who are listening. Do you like, as a therapist yourself, am I on track there?
It is such a beautiful thing that you just said. I mean, to be able to share something with another person that you have built, a certain level of trust. I mean, I bet the part of you that felt like that needed to be pushed down was just terrified of like what was going to happen. I mean, I bet it was like, no, what are you doing to us? We need to keep this inside. Like, what are you doing? You're going to ruin everything. To be able to say the thing and have the person across from you not run away, to sit with you and be by your side and conveying acceptance and conveying that you are okay is such a healing and beautiful thing.
I have found that to be, I mean, at least as of now, as far in as I've gone, like the most healing thing. And one of the things that brings me back to that podcast episode I was talking about earlier, and Dr. Hilary McBride is talking about this experience that she had. And she talks about, she was, hallucinating or whatever. And she's imagining showing the people that she loves the most and cares the most about, kind of walking them through this. She's using a metaphor of a balloon. Like she had funneled all of the terrible and hard and hurtful things that had happened in her life in a balloon. And in this experience, she's like holding the hand of the people she loves the most and walking them through this balloon and showing them all of the things. And they wept with her and they held her. And I'm listening to this podcast episode, weeping. And I said out loud, and they didn't run away. And I was like, oh, that's my thing. That's my fear. Cause and I'm emotionally even talking about it. Cause I'm like, my fear is that if I show anybody the true pain that I have funneled away, they will run away. And because you know why? Because some of them have in my life. And I'm like, and that fucking hurts. when you care about someone and you trust them and you're super vulnerable and they're like, oh, this person's going to hold me, and they don't. I mean, you will shut down. And that's when you drink, and that's when you restrict. And that's when we do all these things to like keep funneling it away and keep funneling it away. So I think part of why that particular sharing that Dr. McBride gave, when she's like, and they just like walked with me, I was like, that's my kind of, I don't want to say golden ticket, but I can't think of a better thing. Like that's where I need to walk towards in terms of my own healing. And I say all that because all these symptoms that we're talking about are a way to move away from that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It can be really, it's just that. It's exactly what you said, Andrea. I mean, it moves you away from being able to heal those places. And sometimes like it like I said before, like it served its purpose for a time, but it's not a good way to live life. Like the way the person feels, like it's usually you feel terrible when you participate in those behaviors over time. And it's really hard on the body. And it's isolating. And that's part of it, because if you aren't making those connections, you're protecting yourself from this feared pain.
Yeah.
I had said this to a friend recently too, who shared something big, and she's worried it was too much. And I'm like, it's a lot. It's a lot. Your pain is a lot. And that's okay. It's okay, because I'm here to be alongside of you in it. And that's what therapists and a dietitian who specializes in eating disorders can be there for, is to be alongside of you when it feels like you're worried you're going to be too much, or it's going to be too much. And they can be there with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We need to take one more ad break. And when we get back, I want to talk to you about some body positivity stuff. Be right back. I
have definitely been in that place where my paycheck ran out before the next one got here. Life doesn't happen bi-weekly, so why should payday? The money you earn can be in your hands today with Earnin. Earnin is an app that gives you access to your pay as you work, up to $100 per day or up to $750 per pay period. Just download the Earnin app and verify your paycheck. Then access up to $100 a day as you work and leave an optional tip. Any money you access plus tips are automatically repaid from your next paycheck. You can use Earnin to pay for a girls' night out, a last-minute gift for a loved one, or even summer camp for the kids. Make Earnin a part of your financial routine and join Earnin's over 3.5 million customers who say things like, when I think about Earnin, I think about financial stability, security. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. Download Earnin today, spelled EARNIN in the Google Play or Apple App Store. When you download the Earnin app, type in noise under podcast when you sign up. It really, really helps the show. Noise under podcast. Subject to your available earnings, location, daily max, and pay period max. See earnin.com/TOS for details. Earnin is a financial technology company, not a bank. Bank products are issued by Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC. You know when you're listening to a song on the radio and you get the profound feeling that the song playing was written about you? Now imagine having the power to gift that same incredible feeling to someone you love with an original song from Songfinch that actually is written just for them. Songfinch lets you create an original radio quality song inspired by your own life and the people you love. It's completely unique, personal, and lasts forever. Whether your song is for Father's Day, an upcoming graduation, wedding, or anniversary, or even just a gift to show your loved one how much you care, start your song now to lock in one of Songfinch's top artists. I gifted Songfinch to myself, a song about my late father, and I'm so excited to play you a clip.
Flipping through the slides of learning how to live and how to love, and coming undone, a father daughters without, so she writes it down.
One of my clients heard about Songfinch from this podcast, and so she had a song created for her son who is graduating, and she told me that they both cried when she played it for him and that it exceeded her expectations. For a limited time, Songfinch is letting our listeners upload their song to Spotify for free, so you and the lucky person you gift it to can listen to it anywhere, anytime. Go to songfinch.com/noise and start your song. After you purchase, you'll be prompted to add Spotify streaming for your original song for free, a $50 value. Again, my URL is songfinch.com/noise. Don't forget to share your song with us too. songfinch.com/noise.
I'd like to introduce you to the Minimalist Moms podcast. It's hard enough being a mom, and the last thing you need is stress from too much stuff and an overcrowded schedule. For too long, I lived with the mindset that bigger was better, and the more I added to my life, instead of feeling better, I felt overwhelmed. It was time for a radical new mindset. Less is more. I'm not into extremes. I didn't throw everything away. My brand of minimalism is more about adding than subtracting. Get rid of the excess to make room for what you love. In other words, it's about living life with purpose. I hope you'll listen in, and my guest and myself can inspire you to think more and do with less. The Minimalist Moms podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
We have a little bit of time left, and I want to ask you about body positivity because I've had several guests on talk about it, and it's, I feel like it was very popular when it first came out, and then people were like, wait, no. And then feminism is intertwined, and white feminism, and okay. So can you, in your opinion, what is it? And like what should we be striving for, both in terms of like our own body positivity, and maybe can you talk a little bit about the movement?
The movement is exactly what you said. Like it might have done some good things in there and pointing to like, oh, there's another way that we're allowed to try to feel about our bodies. But it also kind of traipses along this toxic positivity trend as well. It can make you feel like you're doing it wrong too, which just kind of falls under really the language of diet culture altogether, is that, there's a certain way to do something, and if not, you're doing it wrong. And the way I look at body image in the work that I do with my clients is I look at it too on a spectrum, and that in a real far side, somebody might experience, pretty intense body hate. And on the other more positive end, it might be somebody is able to experience body love in its entirety or in different places about themselves. And in the middle is a very neutral. But there's a lot of stops along the way. Really, if somebody is wanting to do the body image work, I find that any movement, towards that body love end is going to bring somebody relief and help them experience more confidence in their body. That includes hating your body less. Just hating your body less. And I think that what a lot of women have told me is that helps them feel like it's far more approachable, because it's really hard to imagine like loving their body. So if loving your body is the only thing you're supposed to work towards, and it doesn't feel fathomable or even just right to you in your being, like it just doesn't feel like it aligns. I mean, okay, then I'll just stay over here and body hate or body dislike land. Yeah. And so I think it's important for somebody that I'm working with to kind of identify, like, well, where do you feel like you are now? And like, where do you want to be? Like, where, and like, that's what we can work towards. What do you feel like would make your life better?
Instead of saying, I, the expert, think you should lose X amount of pounds. Or maybe like if they give you a huge weight loss number that you want, then maybe as the expert, you dig into that instead of telling them they're wrong.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to note that, a lot of times the only tools that women are being shouted out for feeling better in your body is to lose weight or to exercise or whatever it is. And that is not the only strategy for feeling better in one's body. As a matter of fact, a lot of times it only leads to like a short-term relief, because most weight loss attempts aren't sustainable anyway. So it really doesn't usually lead to a lifelong path of feeling better in one's body, which is really also important to note because our bodies are ever changing. Right. Like we are always changing. And so, I think more so talking about it from a standpoint of like, how do you want to feel in your body? And I work with clients with about 9 different strategies along the way in order to help change the way they see their body and the way that they experience having a bad body day or feeling uncomfortable with their body. You can shift all of that so that it's no longer about like, I need to lose X number of pounds, in order to feel better in this body.
Those kind of qualifications. Well, can we shift over? I have one more question for you before we tell everybody where to find you and close up. The health at every size movement. Can you give us like the 1, 2, 3s? And I know many people use the acronym HAES. Like what is that?
It is a modality for taking care of individuals that can be used anywhere in healthcare or in therapy or anything like that. ASDA is the Association of Size, Diversity, and Health. They hold the trademark for health at every size, but it was a movement that started with queer fat women in the 60s, I believe it was.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it goes that far back.
It does. And it was started by fat queer women who wanted to take a stance of saying that we deserve better care. It's an acknowledgement that you can be you can pursue health for yourself at any size without trying to change your body size. So weight inclusive care is one of 4 pillars of health at every size. Addressing and talking about the impact of weight stigma is another important aspect of health at every size. Moving a body in a way that feels good to itself, and also approaching eating from a more intuitive approach instead of a diet mentality. Those are the core aspects. And so I use that modality when I'm taking care of and helping support anybody that I'm working with, be it somebody with an eating disorder or a woman who is wanting to become more food and body confident, because I find it as an essential way to approach these different areas in order to really kind of liberate somebody to get out of more of a cyclic approach of like weight loss, weight gain, to heading down more of a path of, a sustainable approach to food and their body and their health.
I love this conversation. Of course, I'm thinking of like 3 more questions. I'm just going to have you back on for part 3. I know you're local to North Carolina, but you do online classes and things like that, right? So where can people go if they want to learn more about you and maybe work with you?
So if you are somebody with an eating disorder and you are in the state of North Carolina, and then there are some other states also that we can serve folks in, you can find me at simplenutrition.com. Me and 2 other dietitians that work with me that have similar philosophies. We would love to help support you if you're interested in wanting to move to a different place with your struggles with food and body. And then I work with women, business owners and leaders and professionals and wanting to become more food and body confident in my Becoming Body Confident group. I also do one-to-one coaching, and they can find me there for that at meghadley.com.
meghadley.com and simplenutrition.com. We'll put those links in the show notes. And, I can attest to your work because I'm a personal friend of yours as well. So you have my stamp of approval. Thank you so much for being here again. And listeners, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you so much. And I'm so grateful that you choose to join, being my guest every week. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I would be so incredibly grateful if you haven't done so already, if you could leave a review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Super easy if you already listen to your shows over there. But if you don't, or maybe you have the app on your phone, but you listen to this show on a different app, if you could leave a review for this show, it matters so much. I wish I could express how much it matters. I also wish that it didn't matter so much, but alas, it does. So if you haven't already, please go review and rate the show. It would mean so much to me. And thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing day.
Hey there, I'm Debbie Reber, the founder of Tilt Parenting and the author of the book Differently Wired. The mission of Tilt is to change the way neurodivergence, whether that's having a learning disability, having ADHD, being gifted, autistic, or some combination of all of the above, is perceived and experienced so differently wired kids and the parents like us raising them can truly thrive. On the Tilt Parenting podcast, I get to talk with authors, therapists, educators, and parenting experts who are committed to this mission. I ask the questions my listeners are most curious about when it comes to supporting our kids. And in turn, my guests share strategies for challenges, out-of-the-box ideas for navigating school, best practices for therapies, tips for advocating, and so many thoughtful insights on what it really takes to help our kids grow up feeling seen and respected so they can create awesome lives for themselves. I know that raising a differently wired kid can feel overwhelming and isolating, but I promise you, you are not alone, and it can feel so much better. If you're on this parenting journey, come listen to Tilt Parenting. Together, we can shift this paradigm and show up for our exceptional kids with hope, possibility, and joy.